All right. So, retirement savings, it's probably been on your mind and you're probably like, how does my savings compare to like everyone else's?
Yeah,
We're going to unpack some really interesting data today
for sure.
from this article. Here's how much the average 60-year-old has in their 401k. And the numbers are,
Yeah, they're all over the place.
they really are.
Yeah.
So the article mentions that like a huge number.
Right.
The average 60-year-old from Empower has $555,621.
Okay.
But then it also mentions a median from Vanguard of $70,620. So I don't know what's going on there.
Well, you bring up a really good point, and that is the difference between the average and the median. So, like, the average can be skewed by, like, the super savers,
Yeah.
the people with, millions of dollars. So think about it like this. If you had a small town and everybody makes about the same amount of money, and then a billionaire moves in,
Right.
then the average income for that town is going to be really high,
Yeah.
even though, everybody else is making,
Right.
a pretty modest amount.
Uh-huh.
The median, on the other hand, is more like the person in the middle of the line.
Okay.
So it gives you a better perspective of,
Gotcha. So if I want a realistic view,
Yeah.
I should be looking at the medians, not necessarily the averages.
exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now there's this popular guideline
Right.
that says you should have 8 times your salary saved by the time you're 60.
hmm
Looking at these medians, it seems like a lot of people are falling short. Is that a cause for concern?
Well, it's something to be aware of, but it's not a one-size-fits-all rule.
Okay.
For example, everyone's retirement vision is different, and factors like IRAs, potential inheritances, and most importantly, your planned spending in retirement all come into play.
Yeah.
If you're planning on retiring, in a small town,
Right.
that's going to cost you a lot less
Right.
than somebody who wants to travel the world.
Okay, so it's not just about hitting this magic number. It's really about
Right.
aligning your savings with your personal goals and lifestyle.
Exactly. And so it's really about,
Yeah.
what does your vision of the future look like? And how do you,
Yeah,
how do you
your finance.
align your finances with that vision?
Yeah. Let's say somebody is looking at this 8 times your salary guideline and realizing that they are a bit behind. What are some steps that they can take to catch up?
Well, the article outlines a few strategies, and it's really about figuring out, like, what's the right mix for you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the most effective approaches is to maximize your 401k contributions.
Okay.
So in 2024, you can contribute up to $23,000.
Okay.
And if you're 50 or older, you can add on an extra $7,500.
So that's over $30,000 a year.
It is.
Yeah.
And it can make a big difference in the long run.
Yeah.
And also, don't forget about employer matches.
Oh, yeah.
So if your company offers a match, make sure you're taking full advantage of that. It's like,
Free money.
it's free money.
It is. What if you've maxed out your 401k
Right.
or your employer doesn't offer one? What are some other things you can do?
Well, IRAs are fantastic. They offer similar tax advantages to the 401k.
Okay.
And you can contribute up to $7,000 in 2024 with an additional $1,000 catch-up contribution if you're 50 or older.
All right, so maxing out both your 401k and your IRA can really add up. But what if you don't have an extra $30,000 just,
Right.
sitting around to put away every year?
Right. And it's not always about finding massive sums of money.
Okay.
It's sometimes about making these strategic lifestyle adjustments.
Okay.
So the article mentions a couple
Yeah.
things. One is to work a little bit longer,
Okay.
and the other is to reduce your cost of living.
Okay. I have to admit, working longer doesn't sound that thrilling,
Yeah.
to me at least.
No, I
Okay.
understand. I understand. But, think about it this way. Even working a few extra years can make a big impact.
Yeah.
Not only are you continuing to earn an income, but you're delaying withdrawals from your retirement savings,
Right.
which gives them more time to grow.
Yeah.
Plus, you're also boosting your future Social Security benefits. And if you delay those benefits until age 70, you'll get a much larger
Yeah.
monthly check.
So there are some benefits to working longer,
There are.
even though it delays retirement. What about reducing your cost of living?
Yeah. And that doesn't have to be a major upheaval.
Okay.
I mean, it could be downsizing to a smaller home
Okay.
or relocating to an area with a lower cost of living.
Right.
And the article even talks about, retiring abroad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is becoming more popular
Yeah.
as people want to, stretch their retirement savings and also experience new cultures.
Retiring abroad sounds pretty adventurous.
It does.
I imagine there are some challenges with that.
For sure.
We can talk about those later, but for now, Let's move on to this intriguing concept.
Yes.
The 100-month millionaire.
This is one of my favorite topics.
Becoming a millionaire by investing just $100 a month. Is this really possible?
Well, it might sound unbelievable,
Oh.
but the math really does check out.
Oh,
So the article uses this compelling example to illustrate the power of compound interest.
okay.
So imagine this. You're 20 years old,
Right.
and you start investing $100 a month in an S&P 500 index fund. Let's say, for example, you get an average annual return of 10%.
Okay.
After 45 years,
Okay.
you've contributed a total of $54,000,
Right.
but your account balance
Okay.
would be over $1 million.
Wait, so the majority of that comes from the investment gains and not the money that you actually put in?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the magic of compound interest.
Wow.
Your returns are generating returns. It creates this snowball effect over time.
Okay.
And that's why starting early is so crucial.
Now, I know not everybody starts investing in their early 20s.
Right.
What if you start a little later?
Well, the article gives a good example. So if you wait till 30 instead of 20,
Okay.
that same $100 a month with the same 10% return
Okay.
would only grow to about $380,000
Oh, wow.
by age 65,
So it's a pretty big difference. Yeah.
just by waiting those 10 years.
Yeah. And so it really underscores the importance of time.
Time is money.
Time is money when it comes to investing.
It is. One thing that I'm wondering about, though,
Yeah.
is that this assumption of a 10% return, is that a little too simple? I mean,
Yeah.
the stock market, it's unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right to point that out. The market doesn't always follow a nice,
Right.
neat, predictable path. You know there's going to be years of growth and then years of downturn.
So how do we reconcile this $100 a month concept with this reality?
Well, it's still a powerful framework to kind of guide your thinking,
Okay.
but it's important to approach those projections with a healthy dose of realism.
So it's more about the principle of investing consistently rather than that $1 million figure.
Exactly. So the takeaway is consistent, disciplined investing, even with modest amounts, can lead to significant wealth accumulation over time. But we need to acknowledge that the market goes up, the market goes down.
Right. And, historically,
It's always recovered from
Right.
those downturns.
it has.
Yeah. Now, this whole investing conversation has got me thinking, what's the best way to actually invest that $100
Right.
every month? Because there's so many options out there.
Right. It can feel overwhelming.
It can.
The article points out that index funds are really good, particularly for beginners,
Okay.
especially those that track the S&P 500.
I've heard of index funds, but
Yeah.
can you tell me what they are and why they're a good option
Yeah.
for retirement?
Yeah, so basically an index fund, it's like a basket of stocks that tracks a particular market index,
Okay.
like the S&P 500.
Yeah.
And so it's passively managed, which means you're not relying on a fund manager to pick stocks, which can be expensive sometimes.
Okay.
And so it's a way to diversify your investments without having to become a stock expert.
Okay. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Why the S&P 500 specifically? Are there other index funds out there?
There are, but the S&P 500, it's composed of 500 of the largest U.S. companies.
Hmm.
And so it represents a wide range of industries.
Okay.
And it's a pretty good reflection of the overall U.S. stock market.
So you're getting exposure to the whole U.S. economy.
Exactly. And historically, it's delivered
Okay.
strong return.
Right. But no guarantees.
No guarantees, no crystal ball.
No crystal ball.
Yeah,
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground.
we have.
Looking at these average and median numbers, strategies for catching up, and we've even talked about this 100-month millionaire concept.
Uh-huh.
What are some key things that our listeners should keep in mind as they're working on their own retirement plan?
I think the biggest takeaway is that it's never too early or too late
Okay.
to start.
Okay.
So even small, consistent steps
Right.
can make a big difference over time.
Yeah. Start where you are and go from there.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to reach out to an expert.
Okay.
Financial advisors, they can really help you personalize your plan.
Yeah. It's like having a coach in your corner.
Exactly. And they can provide guidance, especially if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed
Right.
by the whole retirement planning process.
Yeah. It can be pretty overwhelming.
It can be, yeah.
This has been really insightful so far.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next part of our conversation,
Right.
what's one final thought that you would leave our listeners with?
Well, retirement planning, it's not just about the numbers.
Right.
It's really about envisioning your future
Mm.
and making choices today that align with those aspirations.
You're saying it's not just about financial security, but it's also about
Right.
living a life that's fulfilling.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to seek out advice to help you personalize that plan.
Great. We're going to take a quick break here, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly to continue our deep dive into retirement planning. Welcome back. So we were talking about some strategies to catch up on your retirement savings, and we talked about maximizing your 401k and your IRA contributions, but you also mentioned this idea of working a bit longer to give your savings a boost.
Right.
Now, I'm wondering, is that a realistic option for everyone?
Well, it really depends on your individual circumstances.
Okay.
So for some people, working longer might be really physically demanding or just not an option.
Right.
But for others, it could be a really good strategy that lets them, build a bigger nest egg.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned that delaying retirement not only lets your savings grow more, but it also has the potential to
Right.
increase your Social Security benefits.
It does.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So you can start collecting Social Security benefits as early as age 62.
Okay.
But if you do that,
Right.
your benefits are going to be permanently reduced. So if you can wait
Uh,
until your full retirement age, which is currently between 66 and 67,
Okay.
depending on when you were born,
Okay.
you'll get a larger monthly check.
Okay.
And then if you wait even longer until 70,
Okay.
your benefits are going to increase even more.
So it's kind of a balancing act,
Yeah. Yeah.
weighing those benefits against. It is.
Actually wanting to retire.
Yeah. And it really, it's a personal decision,
Okay.
that requires you to think about, your financial situation, your health, your goals
Right.
for retirement.
Yeah. We also briefly touched on relocating to a lower cost of living area
Right.
to stretch those retirement dollars further.
Right.
You even mentioned that some people retire abroad.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What are some of the attractions to doing that?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it's just that idea of, experiencing a new culture, a new way of life,
Okay.
exploring a new country.
Yeah.
But there's also a really big financial incentive
Okay.
because in some countries, the cost of living is so much lower
Right.
than it is here.
Right.
So you can live a more comfortable lifestyle on a smaller budget.
Yeah. I could see how that would be really appealing
Yeah.
if you're worried about your savings lasting.
Yeah.
But I imagine there are some downsides too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, moving to a new country, even temporarily. Yeah.
Is a big decision.
Yeah.
I mean, there's language barriers, cultural differences,
Oh.
potentially a whole new healthcare system,
Right.
legal systems, things like
Yeah.
that.
What about visas and things like that?
Yeah, and that's really important.
Yep.
Every country has its own rules about immigration.
Right.
So it's important to do your research
Right.
before you make a decision.
Okay. So retiring abroad sounds really exciting,
It does.
but you got to plan ahead.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to this 100-month millionaire concept
Okay.
that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
This idea of becoming a millionaire by investing just $100 a month is so cool.
Yeah.
But is it a little misleading? I mean, it is say that that's a guaranteed outcome.
You're right to raise that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a really good illustration of how powerful compound interest is.
Okay.
And it shows you that starting early is important.
Right.
But you also have to be realistic.
Oh, okay. So like the 10% return, yeah.
Over 45 years?
Okay.
That's a pretty optimistic
It is. Yeah, the market doesn't
scenario.
the market doesn't always behave so nicely.
Right.
So, you could have years where the market booms.
Right.
And then you could have years where it's down.
Right.
And then you could have years where it just kind of stays the same.
So how do we think about this 100-a-month concept
Right.
with this more realistic view?
I think it's still a good guideline,
Okay.
but just remember that it's just a projection
Okay.
based on a hypothetical average return.
Yeah.
So the reality is your returns are probably going to be way more unpredictable.
So it's more about that habit of investing consistently
It is.
rather than actually hitting that $1 million target.
Right. The important thing is that regular disciplined investing,
Okay.
even if it's with small amounts,
Right.
can lead to a lot of wealth building in the long run.
Right.
But remember, the market goes up and the market goes down.
That makes sense. It's all
Yeah.
about finding that balance.
It is. Between being optimistic, but also realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that index funds, particularly those that track the S&P 500,
Mm-hmm.
are a good place to start.
Yeah.
For new investors.
They are.
Why is that? What's so good about index funds?
Well, one of the big advantages is just their simplicity.
Okay.
You're buying this tiny piece of like hundreds of different companies
Right.
with one investment.
Right.
So it's instant diversification.
Okay. So instead of picking individual stocks,
Right.
which could be really risky
Yeah,
and time-consuming,
Yeah.
you're basically betting on the entire market
you are.
doing well. Okay.
And the market has historically
Right.
trended upwards.
Over the long run.
Over the long run, yeah. And another good thing about index funds is that their fees are lower.
Okay.
So because they're passively managed, they don't require that active management
Okay.
that other funds require,
Right.
which means they have lower expense ratios.
Okay. So less fees means more money for you.
Exactly. And over time, those differences in fees can really add up.
Okay. So if you're a new investor, index funds are a good place to start.
Yeah,
But what if you want to take a more active role
right.
in managing your money?
Well, you have all sorts of options out there.
Okay.
You know, stocks, bonds, mutual funds,
Yeah.
ETFs, real estate.
Wow. A lot of options. How do you choose the right one?
Yeah, that's where it's really important to do your research.
Okay.
Understand how much risk you're willing to take.
Okay.
And you might even want to talk to a financial advisor
Okay.
to help you figure
Yeah.
out a plan that's right for you.
So it's all about finding a balance between taking a risk,
It is.
but also managing your money
Yeah.
wisely. Okay.
Yeah, and just remember, there's no one right way to invest.
Right.
So what works for somebody else
Right.
might not work for you.
Okay.
So figure out what you're comfortable with
Right.
and make a plan.
Okay. Now, we've been talking a lot about
Yeah.
the financial side,
Right.
retirement planning.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the non-financial side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's crucial.
Okay.
Because, people get so focused on the money part of it,
Right, right.
but it's just as important to think about the emotional
Yeah.
and social aspects of retirement.
Yeah, it's not just about having enough money. It's about
Right.
living a good life.
Exactly. And, figuring out
Yeah.
what are you going to do with your time, how you're
Yeah.
going to spend your days,
Right.
what's going to make you happy.
Right. And give you a sense of purpose.
Yeah. It's a chance to rediscover yourself,
Yeah.
and figure out, who you are now that you're not working anymore,
Right.
and to create a lifestyle that, reflects your values.
Right. So how do you go about crafting that lifestyle? Where do you even begin?
Well, I think the first step is to really think about yourself. What are your
Mhm.
passions?
Okay.
What brings you joy?
Okay.
Right. What are your priorities?
Yeah. Right. It's like an inventory of all the things
It is.
that you might have put on hold.
Yeah. And now's the time to think about those things.
Right.
So if you've always wanted to travel the world,
Okay.
now's the time to start making plans.
Okay.
Researching destinations,
Right.
planning out your itineraries.
Yeah.
And if you've always wanted to take up painting,
Right.
now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe take some classes.
Yeah. Join a group.
Join an art group.
Right.
Doesn't even have to be these big things.
Right.
I mean, maybe you just want to spend more time outside.
Right.
Or volunteer.
Right.
The point is to find those things that are going to bring you joy
Right.
and give
Yeah.
you a sense of purpose.
Exactly.
And that brings up another really important point.
Okay.
It's important to stay connected
Oh, yeah.
to people.
Yeah. We're social creatures.
We
We
are.
need those connections.
So stay connected to your friends and family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even look for new communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Join a book club.
Join a club. Take up a hobby.
Right, exactly.
With other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those connections, they're going to give you a sense of belonging
Okay.
and purpose and support.
This has been a great discussion.
Yeah, it has.
We've talked about, not just the numbers, but
We do.
the deeper meaning of retirement planning.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot more, informed and empowered to
Good.
approach my own retirement planning. Before we wrap up this part of the discussion,
Right.
what's one final thought that you want to leave with our listeners?
Retirement planning, it's a journey.
Yeah,
And there's no right or wrong way to do it.
right.
So the important thing is to get started.
Okay.
Educate yourself.
Yeah.
And look for guidance when you need it.
Right. And create that vision for your future
And create that vision for your future. Exactly.
that you're excited about.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll be back soon with more insightful discussions about things that matter to you. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep working towards a life that you love. So welcome back to our deep dive into retirement planning. And I gotta say, I'm feeling a lot more informed and a little bit inspired to, tackle my own retirement plan after hearing all this stuff.
That's great.
We've talked about some pretty practical strategies for catching up on savings and
Right.
know how to maximize those contributions.
Right.
But then we also talked about the possibility of retiring abroad
Right.
and this idea of having a fulfilling life,
Yeah.
not just the financial side of things.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
This idea of retirement as a time to reinvent yourself,
Yeah.
pursue some of those dreams that we put on hold when we're building our careers.
Yeah, we always think of retirement as this time to slow down.
Yeah.
But it can actually be a really exciting time
Yeah.
for growth and, figuring out what you want to do.
Yeah, and define what success looks like for yourself in
Set
your own terms.
On your own term.
But how do you make that shift? If you've been working for,
Right.
20, 30, 40 years, it's hard to imagine what life would look like
Right.
if you're not working.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to do is to figure out what makes you curious.
Okay.
What do you love to do?
Okay.
What are you really passionate about?
Okay.
And then think about all the things you said you wanted to do
Okay.
if you had time.
Right. So it's kind of like taking an inventory of all those dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
And then what? How do you take that and make a plan?
Well, once you have a good sense of, what you love to do
Okay.
and what your priorities are,
Right.
you can start thinking about activities
Okay.
and experiences that are going to, work for you.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you always wanted to travel the world,
Right.
now's the time to start planning those trips.
Okay.
Do some research,
Right.
figure out where you want to go,
Yeah.
what you want to see. If you've always loved writing, but just never had the time,
Right.
maybe you should dust off that old manuscript
Yeah.
or take a writing class.
Right. Or join a writing group.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be those big things.
Mhm.
It could be spending more time in nature
Yeah.
or volunteering or learning something new.
Yeah.
The important thing is to find
Yeah. The important thing is
those activities that give you purpose and make you happy.
that's it. It's about, creating a life that makes you feel good,
Yeah.
that you're excited about.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you. What advice would you give to somebody who's just feeling overwhelmed by all this retirement planning stuff?
Well, I would say, first of all, don't let it overwhelm you.
Okay.
Start small. Educate yourself.
Yeah.
And, if you need help,
Okay.
ask for help.
So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Don't be afraid.
There are people out there who can help us.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's never too early or too late to start
It's never too early or too late.
planning for your retirement. Start today, dream big, and, make a plan that really gets you excited.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into retirement planning
My pleasure.
and for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you to all of our listeners for joining us. We'll be back soon with more discussions about topics that matter to you. Until then, keep learning and keep growing and keep working towards a life that you love.